So the first thing you're going to want to do is select your stone and cut off all the host rock with the tile saw. Once you have found the piece you're going to want to cut, go ahead and cut off the slab you want to work with. Once you have your slab, it's time to move over to the bench grinder. Here I'm using just a simple 6-inch 80 grit diamond grit disc. This is a very simple setup. I'm using a small tub with about 4 inches of cold water in it. I'm using a 180 diamond grit knife sharpening stone that I keep in the water. The knife sharpening stone is going to help get rid of all of these heavy sanding scratches and bring out any imperfections that might have been missed during the first cutting. For the polishing procedure, we're going to be using wet sand sandpaper. Now for this stone, I'm going to be using sandpaper that is 220, 500, 1000, 1200, and 2000 grit for the final polish. And that's all it's going to take. Now make sure when you're doing this you don't push very hard. It's very easy to crack the stone like this, and make sure it's always submerged underwater. As you can see from using the knife sharpening stone, the sanding scratches are almost gone. However, there's still no shine to it, and it's very dull. At this point in time, it's easy to take note of any imperfections in the stone. Any imperfections you see now will show up greater when the stone is fully polished. The same rule applies with the sandpaper as it does with the knife sharpening stone. Constant and quick movement. Don't let the stone get too hot. After finishing the 220 grit, you'll notice that the colors are very, very bright, and now everything's starting to have depth. However, when you start to dry it off, you'll notice that it's very dull again. This is the stage when you're going to be able to see any imperfections and deep scratches that you might need to go back and go over before you continue polishing. However, this is when it starts to give the appearance of shine. With the 500 grit, it is the same process as well. Continued fast motion without letting the stone get hot. Once you finish the 500 grit, that's when you'll start to notice the true depth of the stone. This is when the plume and everything around it starts to come out. When drying it, you'll start to notice that you're starting to have more shine and gloss. This is the stage when you really start to notice a polish to the stone. Now for the 1000 grit, it's the exact same process as before. Quick and steady movement without letting the stone get hot. As you can see, the depth is getting greater and greater each time we do a new level of sandpaper. The 1000 grit brings out the depth better than before. Now drying it off, you can see the stone is actually keeping most of its shine, and you start to see some of the depth coming through while it's dry. It is up to the individual person if they would like to go over the steps 1 or 2 times. Each time will bring out a new shine and a new depth. Exact same process as before. Quick and steady motion. Do not let the stone get too hot. So when you start to dry it off and you expect it to be dulled, it's a great sight to see when you pull it out, it is just as shiny. Now again, it's up to the individual person whether they'd like to go over 1, 2, or even potentially 3 times with the sandpaper. Each time will bring out a heavier gloss and more depth to the stone. Now for the 2000 grit, it's the exact same process as before. Quick and steady motion. Do not let the stone get too hot. However, this time, make sure that you continuously go with a great deal more pressure than you did before. Don't go too hard that it might fracture the stone, but be sure to be a little bit more aggressive than the previous times. I've decided to go over this stone with 2000 grit one more time to assure that it gets a fine polish. As you can see now, the stone after 2000 grit is just absolutely stunning. And you'll find now, with drying it off, it ends up being the same level of gloss and the same level of depth. Now be sure to inspect your stone very thoroughly and make sure you don't want to go back over any sanding scratches you might have missed and that there's not any dulled areas on the sides. Now to get rid of any of the swirl marks from the 2000 grit sandpaper, I like to use just an old pair of jeans. Now this stage is exactly like the 2000 grit stage. You want to be very quick and vigorous, however, don't let the stone get too hot. Now once I've finished with the denim scrub, I like to just do a once over with a polishing cloth. I like to do this one dry to get rid of any of the previous swirl marks from the denim and the 2000 grit. Now I'm all finished. This is the stone I ended up with from that piece of rock that we ended up cutting. With the stone all finished, it's now ready to be set in either silver or copper, either hand wrapped or set in a bezel. I hope this was a helpful video on how to make hand polished stones.